Good morning, good morning, Facebook and friends. And I'm supposed to already be ready when I ask you to come online with me. But my Facebook had to update this morning, so I do apologize. Good morning, Facebook family and friends. This is Saturday morning with Dr. Mama Rosie Thompson. I'm really happy to be online with you this morning, and I'm really thankful to you for joining today. Um, I want to say already thank you for all of you who will join live, and I thank you all who will come on later and view the video, be here whether it be here on Facebook or on YouTube. I will be posting to YouTube as soon as the live is done for today. Anyway, thank you once again. I appreciate you. I appreciate those of you who've been coming on quite a bit. I see you quite often. I want to thank you for coming on as well. Today, as we continue, we're going to continue to talk about trauma like we're doing. And as I think about this through the week, I oftentimes sit back and I'll think about, well, I think about it a lot. Today is March 2nd, 2024. I think about it a lot. The things I'm going to say that, what's happening. And I just wanted to come on this morning as I was thinking about oftentimes hearing us say things like, and I've said it before too. I've talked to somebody and I said, I've told you this before, and I keep asking you to do it. I keep asking you, you're doing the same thing and I'm not going to deal with it anymore. Not going to continue to deal with this. When we talk about those things, when we look at those things, it made me think about setting my boundaries. Am I setting my boundaries? And I remember we talked last week and we said that the boundaries are these invisible lines that we draw. We draw them for ourselves. They are invisible, so other people don't see them. And if they don't see them, it's unfair for us to expect them to abide by them. And we know that setting boundary is the root of self-care. We cannot care for ourselves unless we have some boundaries, or we are only dealing with people when we ask them to do something. They'll, care enough to do what we ask. And maybe not care enough is not the right word, but they are unwilling, willing, or maybe even able to do what we're asking. And another thing we talked about, some of when we set boundaries, especially when we set boundaries with people that we've known for a long time. Sometimes it's going to be hard, and sometimes it can be even hurtful. Someone's on the line. Thank you so much for joining. Um, well, sometimes it can be hurtful, but it's not harmful. It's not harmful when we set boundaries. These are things we need to do for ourselves to make ourselves better and to be safe. Okay. So first, we recognize that we deserve to be treated with respect. And I want to remind you today that you deserve to be treated with respect. You're a worthwhile person. It doesn't matter what our childhood said about us, what other people said about us, what we heard growing up. You are worthwhile. And being respected and valued is not a privilege or some type of special privilege, a special advantage given to certain people, but it's a right for all people. You deserve to be respected. You deserve to be valued because you are. Respecting boundaries means that what it means is that we're treating someone in a way that they like to be treated. And it shows a willingness to acknowledge them on their own terms. So when we're talking about boundaries, when we're talking about boundaries after trauma in our lives, that's exactly what we want. We want to be treated the way we want, the way we like. And we need to see a willingness to acknowledge us on our own terms. So if that's what we're looking for ourselves, that's also what we have to give. Respecting boundaries means that we are treating someone in a way that they like to be treated, and it shows a willingness to acknowledge them on their own terms. So that's what it's all about, and that's what we're really trying to get to, and that's what we want. Um, if your boundaries are not being met, you feel like I got these boundaries. Some things I really see in my life. These are my area where I need to have boundaries. These are my window of tolerance. And when I see that my boundaries are being overstepped and I see this happening, check to see if you really set boundaries. Sometimes the things we're saying is not actually a boundary. Maybe you're just making a request. And if you make a request, that's useful to meet our needs, but it's not a boundary. So when we talk about having a request, this should be our first course of action with any relationship to make a request when we have a need, the request is the best place to start. By making a request, we give other people the opportunity to meet us in our needs. But when we make a request, what we are doing is asking someone to do something or asking them not to do something. So that's what we're doing. We're asking someone to do something or we're asking them not to do something. But the thing to remember when we make a request is that when we ask someone to change their behavior, they may do it or they may not do it. Requests are unenforceable. The outcome is totally out of our control. So we can ask people to do something, or we can ask people to treat us a certain way, but we can't enforce that, and it's not in our control. When we do when we do have a request, when we ask someone, we want to detail our request so that the other person understands fully what we're asking and how uh, they should respond. If you have a person in your life and you want to spend more time with them, and you say, I need you to spend more time with me. I want you to spend more time with me. That may be a request, but it's not a detailed enough request because that other person may feel that, well, I only go to work and come home every day. What do you mean spend time? I'm here all the time. If that's that may not be what you mean when you say I need you to spend more time with me. So we're going to talk later on about how to set boundaries, how to make these requests. But right now, I'm just going to say this part for right now. When we make a request, we want to make sure it's detailed. So instead of saying I need you to spend more time with me, tell them what that looks like. Okay, I need you to spend more time with me where it's one on one. I need more quality time with you. And when I say that this is what it looks like, I would like for us to go out to eat once a month. I would like to go to the movies once a month. Give them something so would they know what you mean when you say that. If the other person is receptive to your request, we should also offer a window of time for them to shift their behavior. Behavior is learned, and people are not going to just. They may make a mistake. You say that this is a if you say that this is a okay, respect. Thank you, Corvette. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, thank you so much. But when we ask people to make that request, this is playing on two different devices. I apologize for that. I got to turn this one off. It's not going to work for me. Thank you, Corvette. Thank you so much. Let me turn this one off because it's talking on that one too. Okay. Anyway, if when we make a request, if the other party they may do it or they may not. Okay, they may do it or they may not. And another thing, it's an illusion if we think that asking someone over and over they're going to become receptive to our needs. That's not true. We can't force someone. We can't force more on someone who is unable to, unwilling to give it. We have to accept their answer. When we make a request, if that party is unwilling to do it or unable to, we have to accept their answer. We can't enforce someone who is unable, unwilling to give to do more than they are unwilling or unable to do. And like as I said, we want to get rid of that illusion. And if we keep asking over and over, they're going to become perceptive to our needs. We want to get rid of that. That's an illusion that we want to get rid of. Okay. And then at this point, when we have asked and we've asked, and we find that our needs are not being met, we actually have two choices, and both of them are fundamentally they both fundamentally accepts the fact that that person is not going to give it. I'm not getting what I need. You accept it in both of these. We can either radically accept that their behavior is unchanging, or we can stay in the situation as it is. That's an option. I accept the fact that this is the way they are. This is what they're gonna do. They're not gonna change for me, and they're not gonna. It's not gonna be different. So I can accept that. That's an option, or we can set boundaries. So when we get ready to talk about setting a boundary, that's our second course of action. It's not an ultimatum. When we talk about setting a boundary, this is about our needs. When we have sometimes we say if you don't do this do that. When we set an ultimatum, that's designed to control someone else, and that's not what we do. It's designed to control someone else, and most of the time when we set these ultimatums, they'll express with anger. That's not what we do. We're setting boundaries because this is a need that I have, and I want to see, and I need it in my life so that I can be okay. I need to care for me. When we As we go more and talk about setting boundaries and what they look like, But here's just a few things we can do. First of all, recognize that you deserve it. We said it before. Recognize that you deserve to be treated with respect. You deserve that. Secondly, take a second to define and acknowledge what boundaries you need. Check your window of tolerance. See what you can deal with, how much you can't deal with. And then after we do that, after we say, well, we need these, what then also we want to decide if any of our boundaries that we think we have are being crossed. We want to look first of all to make sure that we have a boundary. We'll talk about them later. I know it's maybe out of sync the way we are doing it, but we're going to talk about it later. But this stuff needs to be said before we even go into set boundaries. There are a broad range of boundaries: verbal boundary, psychological boundaries, emotional boundaries, physical, ethical. There are even spiritual boundaries and moral boundaries. People can violate any and all of those boundaries. When I was thinking about this, when I focused on the first four, because those are the ones that I felt affect us more when we've been in traumatic situations and when we're dealing with trauma trigger. And that verbal boundaries is when we are not allowed to speak, or we feel that we are not allowed to be heard. We're not being heard. And it come back, we can see it sometimes by people raising their voice when we try to say something, or they're saying something derogatory or something insulting and saying offensive things to us and about us. I remember when I said that day at the meeting, and I told you about it in a previous video. I said I wanted to be respected, and the lady said, "Everybody wants to be respected. What are you talking about?" She didn't hear me. She didn't give me even a chance to finish what I was saying. And most of the time, when we are talking to people, verbal boundaries is big, because a lot of times when we're talking to people and we're setting our boundaries, they're not hearing us, because most of the time they're forming their answer to what we're saying. They're working already at forming their answer to what we're saying. I remember one time we had a meeting, a town hall meeting at my job, and when they, at the town hall meeting, they was talking about some of the things that they wanted to see us do, and how we could accomplish those things. So I was excited, because I'm always excited. How am I gonna make more money? I went to that job to make money, and what do I need to do to get to the next step? So when I went in and I started to talk to my manager about it, I went to try and talk to her about it, about what I could do. She asked me, "What do you want to do? Walk on water?" Just insulting, just disrespectful. So, and it doesn't matter who it is. I wish that I had known a lot of this stuff. I had enforced a lot of this that I'm learning now when I was in the workplace, because it may have helped someone. I know that I'm not one to talk to people disrespectfully, not purposely, or hurt anyone. But I would have said it if I had known that, that these boundaries were being crossed. And if I had known, I knew that it was hurtful, but I didn't know it in the terms that I know it now. And I may have been able to say something that would really help me and help the person that was saying them as well. We're going to talk about psychological and emotional boundary violations. This includes using what somebody told you in confidence against you, lying to you. Remember, I told you how I had a problem with people lying. It really bothered me. So that's one. That's a psychological. That's a emotional boundary. That's one that I need to set. I had to set or need to set for myself. I people would just say things, just say anything. I don't know why. Criticizing, demeaning, judging, manipulating, making fun of you, making fun of your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, trying to make you feel guilty or responsible for them. That's a huge one. So many times people will try and make you feel responsible for them. You take an example. You work, you take your money, and you go out and buy things, whatever you want. You got a right to buy whatever you want. But then you're upset because somebody didn't bail you out when it came time to pay your bill. I remember when a friend of mine had a job, and one day she did something at work really she shouldn't have done, and her manager told her sent her home, or to gave her some time off, sent her home, and she called me crying saying he know I have bills, so he know I need to pay my bill. Well, you can't make him responsible for you. You should know you need to pay your bills, and you know the rules of the job, so you don't go there doing that stuff. So don't you can't make him feel guilty or responsible for you. That's you did that. And also making demands of your time and energy, shame and embarrassing you. These are psychological and emotional boundaries that may be crossed. Bullying you, assuring you that their thoughts and their beliefs are superior or more important than yours. No, no, they're not. So these are boundaries that we need to may have to set boundaries in place for these things if we find that these are some of the things that are coming up in our lives. Also, preying upon your sense of self. You know, sometimes people will prey on it. These are your personality traits, your abilities, your likes and dislikes, our belief system, our moral codes, the things that motivate you, all the things that contribute to self image or to our unique identity as a person. People will try to prey upon that, upon yourself, your sense of self. We may have to set boundaries in that area where people don't get, where people are not allowed to do that. I have a right to like what I like. I have a right to dislike what I dislike. I have a right to believe what I believe. I have a right not to believe what you believe. It's so many things in life, and I get so many things in life because there's some things that I don't feel like that other people feel that way, and instead of them respecting the fact that I don't feel, that I feel that way, and I try and respect the fact that they don't feel that way, they want to convince me that that way is the right way. Maybe it is for you, but doesn't have to be for me. It's all about acknowledging people on their own terms, respecting each other on our own terms. Then there's physical violations, which includes, moving into somebody's personal space, touching them without permission, being inappropriate, too familiar, handling things that belong to us, violating our privacy, such as our cell phone. It also can include physical harm as well. Okay. The way we're going to start our boundaries, the reason we didn't want to talk about setting boundaries, and anybody who's come on, I know, Corvette, you told me to split the screen. I appreciate the information, and I did split the screen, but when I did, my PowerPoint is too small, and I tried to do it on here, but I'm going to get a second screen so that I can have it both and see all your comments real time. Please don't stop adding your comments. I really appreciate them. Other people are seeing them when I post it online, and I mean, seeing your comments, I really appreciate it because we can all learn together. I'm learning and I'm learning, I'm doing, and I appreciate all of your comments. I appreciate you coming on listening. And I appreciate everything that you're doing. So please don't stop. I do have a second monitor coming, and then I'll be able to see both at the same time. So we're gonna start with ourselves. I think everything should start with ourselves. I guess it's almost like being in an airplane. They have you put on your oxygen mask before we can help somebody else. So before we can set boundaries outside of ourselves, we need to set boundaries with ourselves. And the way we do this, and it's going to help us too when we get ready to set those boundaries for other people to see. We need to get to know ourselves the best that we can. This may make no sense because we may feel that we know ourselves, but sometimes we say that we know ourselves, but everybody else's opinion affect what we do. So we want to get to know ourselves the best way we can. We want to learn what's really important to us, what we really value outside of anyone else. What is it that I value outside of what other people think, other people may do, other people may say? What is it that I value? It's essential that we gain access to our inner world by becoming familiar and comfortable with our own beliefs, our own emotions, our own feelings, and our own ideas. We need to become familiar with those, and we need to be comfortable for them. That after we continue to work on getting to know ourselves, we take responsibility for ourselves. This means that we become aware and know what needs to be done for me. I know what needs to be done for me. And by setting our own boundaries, we're telling others how we want and how we expect to be treated. We're setting the limits on who can come into our space and what we expect from them once they come into our space. How we want to be spoken to, how we want to be touched, and how we want to be treated. There's nothing wrong with that. A person do not know how you want to be spoken to. They know how they normally speak to people. People really a lot of times don't mean any harm when they do things. I remember I remember this a young man I had a date and he came to my house one evening. And he was sitting there, he was talking about he believed in chivalry and I opened doors and I was raised this way and I believe in this. I'm sitting there thinking, and see, that was my problem, my fault, because I didn't say anything out loud. Guilty. And I'm sitting there thinking, you came over here. You didn't call to say, "Hey, Rosie, can I bring you a pop, or can I bring you a bottle of wine? Do you need anything?" That's what I liked. But his mind was on, I believe in shiver. So what he's doing is what he know, not necessarily what I need. And he came in with a cup, a plastic cup, with his drink in it. And I'm sitting there, he talking about opening doors for me, and I'm thinking about how tacky that is. So we are all different. And unless we speak to each other, unless we set these things, unless we communicate these things, people will not know. And then we get upset with them because they don't know. You didn't tell them that line you drew, that boundary line was invisible. And remember, we are not responsible for feelings, actions, and belief of other people, just like they are not responsible for us. We're also not responsible for how they're going to react to our boundaries. We're not trying to hurt anyone. We're just trying to take care of ourselves. And as we do that for ourselves, as we begin with ourselves, we also have to respect the same thing for other people. We're not asking anybody to agree with us on what we're doing. We're not asking anybody to agree with the way we're doing it. We're just asking them to respect it. So we have to do the same thing for other people. We also want to develop a healthy respect for ourselves. Wow. When we talk about that one, because that one we feel that a lot of times feel that I respect myself. But we can't exclude any of our experiences in this. So know that all of our experiences, including the mistakes we made, help to shape our character. That is who we are. I'm not the things that I did well in life. I'm also those mistakes that I made, the dumb things that I made. I'm all of that. So I can't exclude those. So when we develop a healthy respect for ourselves, we have to respect, yeah, I did, like I was able to share. That's why I'm able to share a lot of things about my life. Because now I do have a healthy respect for myself. So sometimes when we got these things in our life, but we're hiding it because we don't. We're ashamed of our own self. Like I said, when I talked to you about my father abusing me, I'm not a rapist. I'm not a rapist. No one beside you and me, no matter how persuasive they may be, can define us or control who we really are. They can't define us. We can only define ourselves. When we truly have a healthy respect for ourselves, all of who we are, then we can expect others to do the same. So when we get ready to talk about boundaries and setting boundaries, we want to pick one thing. We don't want to overdo. You don't have to take on every issue at the same time. Start with that one area which you feel strongly that a boundary is needed. Give yourself a chance to prepare and practice on that one thing, and start with yourself. Saying no is not easy for anybody. Remember that this stems now from us being taught as a kid to be polite, and it was a if saying no to our parents was a way of talking back. They said we were talking back, so we had no rights really as a kid. Especially, I know for me as a Southern kid, we had no rights. We couldn't say no. I remember when I first learned to say no. I wasn't good at it. I didn't have boundaries. I didn't do it in the order that I know now that I should have set boundaries. But when I would say no to people, most of the time, if I said no, I tried to find an alternative for them. If they needed to borrow, I'll use Corvette because Corvette on the line. If they needed to borrow $10 from me, I would say, well, I don't have it. Maybe you could ask Corvette. And that was not my place. That was not my place. I had no right to send them that way because I needed to say no and didn't know how. And when I would say no, when I did learn to say no, I felt guilty about it. I felt guilty because that wasn't how I was raised. So pick that one thing and start for ourselves, that one boundary that we need to set. And as we go on, we'll talk about setting other boundaries, how they look and what it should look like. When we set that boundary, heed those external warning signs. Be aware of those people who will try to push the limits to your boundary. They're going to try you. People will try you. And the more you resist their attempts to engage you in ways that's best for them, the more obvious you'll be able to see it, the more desperate, and sometimes even the more insulting they will become. People don't like, especially those people that you have relationships with already, and they've done this to you for so long, and you didn't have a problem. It didn't seem like we had a problem because we didn't say anything about it. Then we come in and we got boundaries on it now. Yeah, it can be insulting some people. Once you succeed in saying no, it's liberating. I mean, I went to a blind date and we met for coffee. And this young man he was cool, and I would really enjoy talking to him sometimes. But most of the time, he would go off on these conversations about black people don't do this, and black people don't know their history, and black people don't do this, and my ex did that. And I said it, and I thank God I said it, because it would have been unfair to just do what I did without telling him. I told him that I said I really don't like this conversation. This is not what I don't want to talk about. Can we talk about some things like what you like, what I like? Well, you got the floor. What do you want to talk about? It offended him, even for me to ask him. So he kept going back to what he was saying about people. We don't do this, and we don't know our history. And I asked him, and I asked him multiple times. I'm glad I did that, because I felt like that was the right thing. I said it multiple times. And the last time I told him, if this conversation continues this way, and you tell me one more time how what black people are doing that's so wrong, even when I told a young lady that gave us her chair, she had some really pretty eyes, and I told her, "You got some pretty eyes." So you're comfortable telling that girl she got pretty eyes? Just things that I didn't like. And when I said, I told him that if he said it one more time, one more thing about what black people doing that he didn't like, I told him that I was going to leave, and he did, and I got up and left. And at first, I had never done that before. And I would have sat right there in that environment, not saying anything, knowing that it was bothering me. I would have sat right there with a conversation in the back of my mind, not going to ever talk to him again. When I get home, I'm going to delete his number. All of that would have been going on in my mind. But instead, I got up and I walked out of the coffee shop. Thank God, later on, he came back and he sent me a message. We were able to apologize. He apologized, and so did I. Apologized to him. We both apologized to each other. But I'm glad that I was able to do that. So we have to be mindful of those external warning signs, and there are also some internal warning signs. So when we start to experience resentment toward other people, when they reach out to us or ask us for help, instead of us having a boundary there, we start experiencing, we start resenting them, or we get upset when they ask us for help. We don't have to be upset because somebody asks you for something. When you get upset, that means that you don't have a boundary in place. Every time I look around, they spend their money doing this, and then they want me to. Then they asking me for that. That's your boundary. That's you. We gotta take ownership and responsibility for ourselves, and you start avoiding other people or your own responsibility. These are internal warning signs of when we just want to drop everything in the world and move to an island with no address. That's an internal warning sign that I need to change something. I need to set some boundaries in my life. Just a little bit more, then we're gonna stop. But getting comfortable when we talk about setting our boundaries after trauma, know that we need to consider our communication skills. We have plenty of good thoughts in our head. I know I do. But communicating those thoughts could be something totally different. So we have these good thoughts in our head. If we have healthy communication, it empowers us to share those thoughts. And we can view healthy communication and practicing our communication skills, we can view this as an entry point to putting ourselves first. Now, before we even talk about what we can do, let me tell you what some are killers in communication. When we have these conversations, these are killers when we're doing it, especially when we're doing it after trauma. When we minimize, when we are defensive, use sarcasm, when we use universal statements, or when we shut down. When we minimize, we start to say, "Oh, it's not that bad," or "Well, it's not going to kill me. It's okay." No, if you find that these things are affecting you and leaving you feeling overwhelmed, or leaving you feeling isolated, don't minimize it. If you're going to minimize them, then you leave it alone. There's no reason to set a boundary about it. But if it's bothering you to a point, you really need to set a boundary. So don't minimize it. No, it's not going to kill you. But are you okay? Are you okay with being semi-dead? We're not. Don't be defensive. See, we want to be aware of things that we do to fight off these feelings of feeling bad. Like we get angry or we start to pout or we start to pout. When we start to communicate our boundaries, we want to be assertive, but we want to be polite. So we don't want to be defensive. We don't want to get angry. We don't want to start yelling. We don't want to use sarcasm. I didn't know it was sarcasm because I didn't take it as sarcasm. But I used to always have these comebacks when people would say something. Like if I wanted to say something, I tried to have some type of witty interjection to the conversation, or I tried to play it off to lighten the mood. Our feelings are very important. It's nothing. It's not something that we need to play off or lighten the mood about. It, act like it's okay when it's not. We don't want to use universal statements when we're talking to anybody. You always do this. You never know. It's not always and never. It seemed that way sometime in our mind because it seemed like it happened repeatedly, but that's not always and that's not never. So we don't want to say that to people like you've never been right. No, no, no. We don't want to feel like you always do it. No, they don't. Some things they do good. If not, you would have never met them. Even had began to build a relationship with them. And we don't want to shut down. Well, that's okay. Forget it. No, we don't want to shut down because if we shut down, we take ourselves right back to the beginning of where we were before. But we're getting these trauma triggers and we don't know how to deal with them. Recognize and remember that boundaries are hard for everyone. Trauma or no trauma, you are not alone. Be between social conditioning and personal influences in our lives, people can feel uncomfortable going against the tide. Some of us feel that saying no is to admit some kind of weakness. Take comfort in knowing that this is challenging and an ongoing process for not just you, me, but for everyone. And as I always say, seek professional help. When you anybody who's undergoing any trauma needs, professional guidance is always good. Therapy is a useful vehicle and a safe place to address all our boundary and trauma related concerns. So therapy is always good. You got this person who really doesn't even know you. You can go in and be comfortable. You can go in and say what you need to say. You can get through what you need to get through. They can offer some advice and stuff on how to help you. Excuse me. So yeah, get therapy. Therapy is good. Don't feel that it's not a good thing. It is a good thing. I'm gonna see. We have comments. Thank you, Corvette. And thank you, Raheem, for listening. Regina, thank God. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Sandra, so good to see you. Thank you so much. Thank you all for listening to these and for coming online. We will be posting these on YouTube for anyone who's not joining online. And we're here every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. until God say different. So we're gonna talk some more about communicating our boundaries. We talked a lot. We talked about trauma. We understand trauma is normal. It may not their trauma may not be my trauma may not be their trauma, but we know that it's normal. We know that when trauma is activated by triggers, the trauma is over, we can't change it. But when the triggers come in our lives, what can we do for those triggers? What can we do to manage those triggers? We want to always bring our nervous system back to the baseline, which is ventral vagal. That's what we want to do that. We want to be mindful of window of tolerance. We want to know this is how much I can take. This is what's upsetting me. This is what's bothering me. We want to be mindful when we look back for the flashback. I remember this keep happening. It may not be the same thing, but it's giving me the same emotional response. So I'm looking at these things, that these are triggers and things that's coming in our lives and things that are hurting us. And then we want to see. I've asked somebody over and over. I'm still getting the same response. Maybe I didn't set a boundary. Asking someone to do something is not the same as setting a boundary. When we ask them, we have to respect the fact if they don't do it. But a boundary is you control it because that's your invisible line that we draw. And when somebody oversteps that boundary, we'll talk about how do we manage that. When we asking is not the same as boundaries, and boundaries are not the same as giving people ultimatum. We don't give people ultimatum. Just that we don't want people giving us ultimatum. We don't give them people ultimatum. We're trying to live our lives in a way that's positive, that's good for us. We want to respect ourselves. We want to get to know ourselves. So began as you began to think more about boundaries, think more about them. Practice the one that's in the one that for yourself. Set a boundary for yourself. And when people come in, or other people will come in, especially if you're doing it around people who have known you to be one way. I was the person that everybody could come to, not everybody, but my family members and friends could come to, and they would say stuff to me like, uh, I haven't had anything to eat all day, and I'll go trying to find them something to eat. Well, maybe they wasn't hungry all day. I didn't have to do. I just did so many things, and I used that one. But I've done so many things in life that I shouldn't have been doing. I should have waited. I should have thought about stuff. I should have paid attention more, but I didn't. But today, February was this March 2nd, 2024. I can pay attention going forward. We don't hold it. We don't hold the things against us of what we didn't know. We don't hold things against us of what we didn't do. We'll take today and go forward and be everything that we want to be. And as we continue to learn, as we continue to grow, as we continue to appreciate ourselves, as we continue to respect ourselves, and then other people will too. You remember we talked about how we project our insecurities onto other people? So we're going to project our positivity onto other people as well. So next week we'll talk some more about trauma and boundaries, and how trauma will sometimes it even complicates the task of setting and enforcing our boundaries, because it impacts the way we understand and relate to our own boundaries. So we'll talk about that. And hopefully, if anyone has set a personal boundary, has set a personal boundary, maybe you can come in and talk about it. We would like to hear from you if you want to share. Because remember that when we do set our boundaries, having them pushed across can cause emotional damage. So when we set our boundaries, start with ourselves. This is something that I want. Talk to your therapist and be mindful. Just please be mindful. We have our affirmations for today. We want to thank you again for coming online. We really appreciate it. We'll be back Saturday morning at 8 a.m. and I will be posting this video to YouTube after we finish today. We have one trauma affirmation from Benzia59. Thank you for sending that. Today is a very good day to have a great day. Thank you for sending that one. Our other affirmations for today: we are not mistakes. We are overcomers. We are allowed to seek help. All of our emotions are valid. We accept ourselves completely. We are survivors. It only matters what I say, what we say to ourselves. Other people can say what they want, but what matters and what affects us is what we say to ourselves. And we are a safe place for ourselves. We're going to always be a safe place. We're going to continue to learn, continue to listen, continue to grow, and we are a safe place for ourselves. I really appreciate you all for coming on today. I will be back Saturday. And thank you so, so, so much. Have a great day. Goodbye.